Hello, my name is Matthew Belisario. Welcome to the Belisario Sonic YouTube channel. Another conversation with another special guest here, Brian Charette,
Hi,
organ
Matthew.
player. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing okay. Still
I'm
alive.
glad you can make it here and talk to us a little and tell us a little bit about yourself. I'll just give you everybody a quick introduction on what I found out about you on the internet. So maybe it's true, maybe it's not. You can fill us in here.
Okay.
So I see that you were born in Connecticut, Meridian, Connecticut,
Meriden.
and your mom was the primary influence, I guess, on you as
She played the
playing.
piano very beautifully, and we had a piano in my house.
And then it says that you started playing organ by kind of baptism by fire. You started playing for a St. Mark's gig where you just got a new organ,
Yep.
and but not long after that, you're playing with big guys like Lou Donaldson, Houston Person. You graduated from the University of
I
Connecticut.
actually played with those guys before I played organ. I play with
Oh,
them
really?
now. I play with Houston now,
Okay.
and but that was when I was still on piano, so I hadn't even played organ yet when I played with
Oh,
those.
interesting.
I
Okay.
played with them first when I was pretty young, maybe 17.
Interesting. So you
I
graduated
was
from the
17.
University of Connecticut, right?
Yep.
It says that now I didn't even know this because I didn't know that you played with other people like Joni Mitchell, Paul Simon, Cyndi Lauper, Oz Noy. I saw John Patitucci, of course. I've seen you play with him. You're also very big into education. You've written for the Keyboard Magazine, New York City Jazz Record, Downbeat, Czech Magazine, called Musicus, and you also teach master classes all over the world. And now, of course, you're a staple in New York City. So that's kind of was all that accurate?
It's accurate. I've been in New York for 30 years. This is my 30th year. I moved here in 1994. And that's when I started to play organ at the St. Mark's Bar, which was right on the corner of where I lived in the East Village. I lived in the building on the cover of Physical Graffiti. You know that Led Zeppelin
Oh
album?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
So I lived in the lower right-hand corner window. I've
Oh,
heard the
neat.
buildings have been switched, though, 96 and 98. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
really?
That
So
I don't know.
tell us the story though about. So basically, as a child, you started playing piano, right? And then
Yes.
how does that lead into you playing organ?
Well, I played a lot of piano throughout the by the time I was 21. I was playing a lot. I was working a lot in music. I was working with people like this that you mentioned. When I moved to New York, I was kind of starving. I think I was 21 years old. It was 1994. And I was still what we would call doing Chitlin circuit gigs with blues artists. And for those gigs, I needed to play organ. So, new technology at the time, Hammond XB2 was like was the most modern organ clone keyboard that had come out. That had just come out. So I got one of those with a small Leslie called a 302, and I would go on the road with these blues acts. One guy was named Lee Shot Williams. Another guy was Percy Struthers. They would record for a label JSP from England. I don't know if you know that
Oh
record
yeah,
label.
yeah.
So I did a lot of those recordings when I was young with these kinds of artists. I think I even did one with Buddy Guy and Phil Guy. So I'm on I don't know 10 of those albums. I'm not sure, but this is how I got into knowing these guys. I also knew an agent in Connecticut that was booking a lot of these kinds of acts. So that's how I started to play organ. And when I got the organ delivered to me that day, I'm unpacking it in my kitchen. It came from Golf Professional in Connecticut as well, which is a big organ place. I got called to play at the St. Mark's Bar by Frank Bombera, who was a drummer that lived on the Lower East Side. I didn't really know how to do it at all. I always had walked the bass line. I went there and we had a good time. I guess it was okay. I wish I could push a button and go back there right now. And that's how the whole thing began. So people would come to this place. They had a lot of great artists there. That's where I met Jay Collins, a saxophonist from Portland. I started to play in his band organ. I met a lot of people there. So they never even really heard People in New York hear me play piano now, but they didn't really hear me play it back then. They only heard me playing organ. And that's when I started to play in Harlem on Jack McDuff's organ, which is where this tribute album comes from.
That's awesome. So, it's one thing about the organ, of course, it's not the most popular instrument in jazz. So it's kind of,
It's polarizing.
yeah, it is. So in New York there, did you play, I'm always interested in learning about the jazz, open jazz jams, because
Sure,
we have
that's
one
mostly
here.
what I was doing.
And so tell us a little bit about those experiences. How did that affect your playing in your relationship with these other jazz musicians?
Well, most of the things I did in Harlem were kind of like that. Like people would sit in. I would play at a club called Showman's. And this is the club that Jack McDuff's organ was in. And I didn't even know that until Joey DiFrancesco told me.
Okay.
Maybe 4 years ago. Up until then, I didn't know that. It was actually in a pretty bad state of repair. The pedals would stick, and I'd have to do this kind of acrobatic move where I would unstick the pedals. Many saxophonists would sit in at very up tempos. So I physically, to me, the biggest training from being in Harlem was the physicality of playing the organ. It's kind of like an elliptical machine, you know, everything is moving. So I had to learn to conserve my energy, how to use my legs so they wouldn't get tired on the pedals, and that was an invaluable experience.
And any notable musicians that you played along with that were I'm sure there's a lot of them, but anybody come to mind in particular that was very influential?
I played with a trumpet player named Joey Morant. Have you ever heard of him?
I don't think so.
He was a very interesting, gregarious man who would play trumpet. I played there every Thursday, and sometimes tap dancers would come and tap along to the music, which I never really did anywhere else. You know, Larry Goldings has this amazing music with the tap dancer. Have you heard that?
No.
Pretty
Have to
amazing.
check that out.
Who else did I play there with? I played there mostly with local people, singers. Annette St. John was a singer that I played with there. You know, this is so many years ago, too. It might be 28 years ago that I was doing this. So, yeah, I played there with lots of different people.
And do you still go to the jazz jams? Are there still a lot in New York now that you
I
go
go
to,
to
or
them,
do you?
but I don't play.
Oh, you don't.
There's, you know, the Club Smalls in New York. So I really love this place. And sometimes on the weekend, they have afternoon jam sessions, which are really good. And there's a bassist that Tyler Mitchell. Do you know Tyler?
I've seen his name, but I don't know him.
So I think
very
he
well.
played in Taylor's Wailers when he was very young, and he's a very interesting bassist. And he writes beautiful music, and he has a band with like a bunch of saxophones. And I don't play. I don't really sit in at jam sessions anymore because I don't try to like wait in line and get up there and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
So I usually just go there to meet my friends or something, you know.
So tell us, let's get into this album a little bit. How did you, first of all, how did you put this all together? Corey's on it. Of course, you're on his label, the Cellar Music label. So tell us a little bit about that relationship and how this album came together. It's just fantastic.
I've known him for a long time. I used to play at the Cellar, which is where the name comes from for the record label, in Vancouver for years. We may have met through a mutual friend, Ian Hendrickson Smith. Do you know Ian?
No, I don't.
He's a great alto player. He plays on one of the late night shows, Jimmy Fallon.
Okay.
So he is that the Roots that plays on that show? So he plays with them on that show.
Okay.
I met Corey. I started to play at the Cellar in Vancouver. We've been talking for years. I think in 2000, I can't remember what year it was, 2019 maybe, we recorded Jackpot at Rudy Van Gelder's, and Corey played on it with Bill Stewart and Ed Cherry, and the album did really well. Everybody loved it. You know, my organ albums before that point were much more, I don't want to say avant-garde, but they had electronics. They were very off the beaten path of organ music. And these two albums are very traditional. So that's how we met. And I had been going up there after Jackpot to play with him at Frankie's, which is the new place where he does the music in Vancouver. I love it there. I know his parents, who are lovely people. And we started talking about what we should do. He actually, can I go grab another album to show you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Corey, last year, came out with this album. This is a live, unreleased recording from Seattle. And he actually wanted me to write something about Jack McDuff in the liner notes, somewhere in here, on the sleeves. He asked me about it. He asked a bunch of organists about Jack McDuff. And I said, when he asked me to write them, I played on his organ at Showman's. So this is kind of where the whole conversation began about this. Now, if you look at this album, the new one for me, we actually cover a couple of these songs on this album. So Jolly Black Giant is on here, 6:30 in the morning is on here. So we recorded those songs, and I also wrote some other songs in the style of Jack McDuff, who is actually my favorite organist and organ composer. I really love Jimmy Smith, but it's very intense sometimes for me. And to me, Jack had all of that, but it was a little more sedate, and I loved his compositions. Especially his late kind of disco stuff is really interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that, because I
think
have a lot of his older stuff.
Can I get one more album? I know.
Yeah,
you
oh sure, I love albums. We got.
All right, let me see if I can find this. So this is a very interesting album.
Okay, I don't have that one, but I've seen that one, and it's.
I actually reviewed this for the New York City Jazz record, and this is like very freaky disco or something.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So,
but the compositions are really very nice. So I'm into this guy, and I kind of do weird, freaky stuff too a little bit. So I feel like I can relate to him.
So tell us then about the guitar player around here, Dave Sekula, because it looks like he actually mixed and mastered this as well as playing on it. Tell us how you.
The guys on the album are really bright and brilliant, and they're all very nice. So our working relation, all of us have been playing together for years at Frankie's in Vancouver, and we played at I think it's called Shadbolt Arts Center. But we would play concerts all throughout British Columbia, for a bunch of years. I might have known David for over 10 years at this point, maybe even longer. And we were talking about where we wanted to record. We recorded at this great studio. Let me see the name of it.
Arrow, which...
Yeah, so it was really cool. The organ was really funky. It had a lot of, organs, as they age, just like me, they have idiosyncrasies, like the way the keys go down, how much click it has, and I feel like they really captured it beautifully on this album. And on vinyl, it sounds really amazing.
Three-dimensional.
David did a brilliant mix. The mix is perfect. John, the drummer, plays like every instrument. So I actually think I had never played with him before on drums. I think he played bass with us. I can't even remember because he plays so many instruments. But he sounds perfect on the drums on this. He really nailed the style. And a lot of the songs that I've written, I write 2 songs on this album that are kind of modern. It's Early America and Microcosmic Orbit. The other compositions, maybe there's 3 or 4 of them, are very much an homage to Jack.
And how did the studio sessions go? So did you guys do a rehearsal before you went, or did you just show up?
We played a couple gigs. I wrote the music. We played at Frankie's. I think we played at Shadbolt. And then we went in to record the next day, and it's like 1 or 2 takes. Like our session was like 5 hours long, I think.
That's it. So you guys already practiced, so you already knew the songs, and it wasn't...
I sent them the music beforehand, and they were very prepared, and I was prepared, I guess. And we just recorded. You know, these guys do this all the time.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic, and it definitely has a feeling of spontaneity where everybody is just grooving and jamming and playing off of each other.
Well, we felt very calm around each other. That was the thing I remember most about being with these guys, is it's so high-minded and calm. And this is where I thrive. You know, I don't really like to be in difficult musical settings.
And so tell us about the Frankie's Club, because I've heard about it. Of course, I've never been there, but that's pretty much the main jazz club now in Vancouver, correct?
I would say yes. I think in the beginning, the series was organized by a woman named Joan, who was really cool. We actually do a song for Joan on the album. That's the Joan. Have You Met Joan is this woman. She was really, really into the organ. I think she was responsible for a lot of the things that happened in coastal jazz, which is a Vancouver jazz society, or maybe it's British Columbia. And when I first started to come to Frankie's, she was doing the concerts. She sadly has passed away. But I played, she was a lovely woman. You know, I played a party at her house. She flew me business class. Nobody ever did that before, to play a party, you know. And since she has left us, Corey has kind of taken over. He's a very meticulous, smart man and has cultivated a great mailing list. So everybody, his mailing list comes to his concerts because they're usually the best guys, because he's very hooked up. I mean, to me, he has the best business model of a jazz record label. He's really bright. And you can hear the way he plays as well. So I think he's a really uncommon guy to be able to do all these things. He's a very powerful man.
Yeah, you're right. I talked to him just not long ago again on the channel, and it's very interesting how he has the camaraderie with the musicians, because he is a musician.
He's very
and
highly
then,
respected, you know.
And then, you know, the way he runs the label is very oriented towards the what you guys want. You know, and so yeah, it's one of my favorite labels for sure. I mean, and he's putting out a lot of great records. But Todd, let's talk a little bit about the songs on here. So a couple of them are Jack McDuff. The first one's Early America, right? And that's one of your own tunes, and it's a little bit different sounding as far as like the arrangements and things like that. So tell us a little bit about that, how you wrote that.
This is the first song I wrote for the album. And, you know, when I was writing music for this, I was recording a bunch of other albums. So I was writing, I think in 2 weeks, I wrote 40 songs.
Wow.
I wrote a lot. And I write very quickly. I have an idea. I just write it down, where it goes next. Try not to make it too complicated, and then I'm done. Like, it's very fast. And I don't agonize over it too much, you know. So I was thinking, for some reason, someone was telling me about the Trail of Tears, which is not the happiest of stories. I was thinking about it. And I thought, would it be like to be, you know, with Native Americans at those early times, living in nature without all of the modern stuff. And that was the inspiration for this song.
Cool. Then you've got the Jack McDuff the Jolly Black Giant, right?
That's from this album.
And that's from that album there. So that's
yeah.
one of your which is fantastic. Then you got You Don't Know Jack. Go ahead.
It's 2 bars short. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
It's a blues that's 2 bars short, which is very interesting. There's like a hit at the end of it, and then it goes into like regular blues. But this might be my favorite cut on the album, this one.
Oh, really?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's really intense. I love, and again, everything sounds, the organ, the way it was mixed it sounds 3-dimensional. It sounds fantastic.
I think it's the best organ sound on any of my albums that I've ever
heard. Then you got You Don't Know Jack, which is pretty much straight ahead kind of.
Have you ever heard a Jack McDuff song called Soulful Drums?
Soulful Drums. What album is that off of? I don't think so.
I don't remember, but Jack McDuff's drummer for many years was Joe Dukes, and they had a complicated relationship, I think. But on this song, it's this kind of thing where he does a big, shouty organ stab, and Joe Dukes is filling on the drums. So that was the inspiration behind You Don't Know Jack.
And then you've got the another Jack McDuff tune, which is in the morning.
6:30 in the morning.
6:30 in the morning.
That's on the Seattle album.
That's on the Seattle album. So then you have Microcosmic Orbit, which I like that a lot.
I like
so
that too. Microcosmic Orbit is a type of Taoist meditation. I don't know if you know that I study Kung Fu.
I think I did read that on one of the.
I don't really do it with other people anymore or any kind of fighting things, but I study the very ancient forms and all of these very esoteric qigongs now. Microcosmic being kind of the most advanced one, maybe. It's hard to know if you're doing it right. It's spoken about very cryptically. I have new books about it, but it's like thousands of years old stuff, you know.
Interesting.
And you pump your chi with your perineum. Do you know what that is?
No.
That's a fancy word for your butthole. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So you kind of pull that up into your body and circulate the chi or your essence or breath or whatever you call it up your spine and back down your front, and you're making it go like this, and you're also touching your tongue to the roof of your mouth just behind your teeth, which the Taoists say completes an electric circuit.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
This is what that is. And I've been trying to get that together, especially on the beach in Venice. But I'm still working on it.
Okay, so that's the idea behind the tune there. That's interesting. Yeah, I would never have. Okay.
Sorry.
No. And then Have You Met Joan? You talked about that, and that's Corey wrote that, correct?
I wrote that. I believe it's based on Have You Met Miss Jones? And they had a lovely relationship. Very nice people, you know. And that's his tribute to Joan.
Which is, I love that one as well. The whole record is fantastic, just listening to it all the way through. Then the last one, Why'd You Have to Go and Lie to Me, Boy?
So two friends of mine, Cyrus Madden and Eric Kalb, they gave me permission to tell the story, so I can use their names. Hi, guys. They were going to Jazz Fest in New Orleans with a band called Deep Banana Blackout, which I actually also played in when I was younger. And they had a jar of marijuana somewhere in the van. And they were in a rest stop. They started driving, and there was a roadblock. They were pulled over by a state trooper who asked them, "Do you have anything in the van?" They said no, but when they looked, they found this jar. And the state trooper said, "Why'd you have to go and lie to me, boy?" And I've told this story to a bunch of different people in a bunch of different places, and it's become legendary. So this is the inspiration behind that song.
Cool. Well, now let's talk about what I did. As I pulled out just a few of some organ albums that I had in my vinyl collection. You obviously collect vinyl records.
I don't have tons, but I have a lot of my favorite albums on vinyl. I usually only listen to vinyl now.
So maybe you could show us a couple of your favorites too.
Sure, can I go?
There? Yeah. Because I'd love to see those.
I'm going to grab a few from different genres if it's okay.
Yeah.
These are just my ones that are in the front. 2 seconds. I'm getting a couple that are going to shock you too. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, I think this is enough for now.
All right.
So, do you know Tony Monaco?
Nope, I do not. I'm not
Great organist, and we're very good friends. This is his favorite Jimmy Smith album.
Which one is that?
This is The Boss.
Okay.
I really like this one. This is George Benson, I think, on this one, who sounds incredible. Actually, my favorite Jimmy Smith album is Organ Grinder Swing.
Okay, yeah. He has so many. He has such a big discography. It's hard to.
This I really like.
Grant Green.
I like Babyface Willette because he plays on the second percussion harmonic, which is a little woodier, and I think he uses a different vibrato. It's a very interesting sound. I got a bunch of Larry Young albums.
Oh yeah, okay.
And these are expensive, you know, they're like $40.
Yeah.
I scratched this one immediately when I put it on my turntable because I dropped the needle. This is my mother's first pressing.
Oh really? That's awesome.
Beatles. I listen a lot to rock too, everything. This one.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I love Joni Mitchell.
Oh yeah, that's a great
Sport and Spark,
Yep.
my favorite. I love Dexter.
Oh yeah,
Gordon.
Dexter Gordon. That's a classic album, huh?
I like, you know, most of my jazz concept in the beginning came from lyrical saxophonists
Okay.
like Hankenstein.
Hank Mobley.
This
Yep.
is kind of my favorite. If I want to listen to if I could only listen to one jazz artist, it would be Hank Mobley with Lee Morgan.
Oh yeah, that's not. Yeah, you can't
I
go
love-
wrong there. Oh yeah, Steely
Yeah.
Dan.
I really love progressive rock.
Oh, I do too. Oh yeah, you can't beat those Yes albums. That's
Close to the
fantastic.
Edge. Super into Don Patterson.
You know, I haven't seen a lot of his stuff.
He's very interesting. He had a troubled life, but man, the best album, I think it's called Steady Comin' At Ya. I think it's been re-released on Muse, but it's with Pat Martino, so he played with Pat
okay.
Martino, and that's really great. I actually knew Keith Emerson and got to play with him one time
Oh really?
from being with Hammond organ.
So you like all that Emerson, Lake and Palmer stuff? All that?
I would say he's like my big dude. I would almost say on organ I sound most like Keith Emerson than a jazz person at times. Even though he was a jazz person
Right.
to me.
Yeah, interesting. That's cool. So you would, as far as jazz organists go, outside. Well, let's talk a little bit about. I'll show you a couple of the ones I picked out, which is this Jack
That's one of
McDuff.
my favorites. That's one of my favorites. Sure.
That's a really cool album, huh?
No, that's maybe my favorite Jack McDuff album.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a big one for me.
Yeah,
And
this
it
is.
doesn't even have that cover anymore.
Oh, really?
I think the cover is different, like my version of that. And they call it, here, let me get mine. Let me see.
Yeah, let's
It's okay.
compare. And these are hard to find too. I can't remember where I found this one, but
Give me a sec. I won't go crazy if I
because this one here is on the original Prestige, the yellow black label, but
What is it called? Okay. Read me the songs on that album.
Brother Jack Meets the Boss. So you got Watch Out, Strollin', Mellow Gravy, Christopher
Okay, so
Columbus.
this is what I have. for
Oh,
that.
interesting. Let's see the cover of
So
that.
this
one.
is a different thing.
Oh yeah,
And it's
I've
called
not-
Mellow Gravy, but this, I believe, is the same album.
Interesting. I've
This
not
is what
seen
it
that
looks
cover.
like. But when I had it on disc, it looked like that.
Is that what's the label look like on that? Is that a Prestige or is that like a
It is a
different?
Prestige, I believe.
So it might be a later one than this.
I'll show you.
Yeah,
Is
so
that-
that's with the green label. That's a later. Yeah, that's a reissue.
I don't know about all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's why
Awesome.
we need people like you.
Yeah. I'm always learning. You never,
But I'm super into albums. You know, to me, the experience of holding this in your hand like this.
Oh yeah.
I think everybody has realized compact discs do not last as long as vinyl does. I mean, after 10 years, they kind of crap out,
Oh, there's the New York Sirens, right?
It's actually pretty chilled out today. But yes.
So you're right down. You're in Manhattan, or where are you?
I'm in Manhattan on 14th Street, very near Union Square.
Oh, okay.
So I'm 14th Street between 2nd and 3rd.
So here's another cool Jack McDuff, which is at Parnell's. This was a reissue of a live one. This
I
is
don't
pretty
know that.
smoking.
I don't know it.
Yeah, yeah. So this one is really good, very intense playing, and
Huh?
you've got Jack McDuff, Danny Williski's on sax, Henry Johnson guitar, Garrett King on drums, and it's of course a live recording, but it's really
Wow. Yeah, he was something. Have you seen the YouTube video of him kind of giving a master class on organ? That's very interesting.
no, I haven't seen that.
It just came out recently. It's like a 40-minute video. It's just him at the organ talking about what he's doing, and you can see his techniques. It's pretty cool.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
So we got to go to Jimmy Smith. We got to definitely look at a couple of these. Of course, this is classic. You got Volume 1, Volume 2 with the
Yep.
Smalls.
And do you know the story about this album?
Probably not. Tell us.
The percussion on the organ, there was something wrong with it, and maybe it wasn't going through the vibrato, or there was something wrong with the percussion that gave it a very particular sound. It was broken.
Oh, really?
But it led to him playing, some people say that's his best album. So something was malfunctioning with the percussion on the organ on that
Interesting.
album. Yeah.
Interesting. Another one of my favorites of Jimmy Smith is this one here, House Party. And
Yep.
of course, because you've got Lee Morgan on here, Curtis Fuller, Lou. I mean, you got the whole lineup.
Do you know the organist Will Blades?
I don't know. I don't think so.
He's also great West Coast organist. That's his favorite Jimmy Smith album, and he introduced me to that.
And then this is probably my favorite. Well, it's hard to say, but this is probably my favorite one. I don't know why I love this one.
That's a good one.
This is
George Coleman on alto saxophone on that one.
yeah. And then of course Lee Morgan's on it.
Yep.
You've got Kenny Burrell.
Yeah.
Of course Art Blakey on some of them, but yeah, this
And
is
that song, The Sermon, it's 20 minutes, very, very long, and it totally speeds up, which Art Blakey could do sometimes. And the tempo at the end of the song and the feeling is very different from the beginning of the song.
yeah. That's probably one of my favorites. This guy here is interesting too, and this is kind of a cool album.
That's my favorite, Dr. Lonnie. I play that song, Son of Icebag, from that.
Oh, okay. And of course you got Lee Morgan on this as well.
I knew him very well too because we would be at Hammond Organ. We're Hammond artists, and we go. Do you know the NAMM show? Do you know what that
Right,
is?
yeah, all the instruments and new stuff.
So I would hang out with him there for years, and he was a jokester. He'd sit down next to you, and he wouldn't look at you. And he had this cane that was actually a MIDI cane that made music that he would play in his performances. So he'd sit next to you, and he'd be looking the other way, and then he'd put his cane on your foot. And he'd slowly turn to you and say, "You owe me money," or something like that. He'd also say, "I hate you."
Always
We
joking.
would eat breakfast together when we were at those shows. He always ate oatmeal for breakfast. He was a very interesting man,
We cannot go without this one, and of course, one of the few female, Shirley Scott. Then, of course, this is on Corey's.
I just heard that for the first time, and she's playing bass on that, which is really unusual.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
She's playing the bass on the organ. She usually played with George Duvivier, right, on bass, so that's a great album. She sounds very modern on that, too.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the organ. I've got one of these Nord keyboards, Electro 5 keyboards, and it's got the organ sound on it, and you got the slide bars. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about the different sounds? So, like, maybe you listen to Jimmy Smith's tone on the organ is different than Jack McDuff. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I'm really still...
Sure. The interesting thing about Jimmy Smith is I think percussion was just added to the organ in 1955. So before Jimmy Smith, the organ was played in a very different way. If you listen to Weil, Bill Davis, it's got a very shouty, big band, full drawbar sound. You also have organists like Ethel Smith. Have you ever heard of her?
Yep.
She was like the first rep for Hammond. It's a little different. It's a little more nasal. There's more black drawbars, which have more reedy tones. From Jimmy Smith on, very many organists would play their solos with the first 3 drawbars out and all of the percussion tabs up, which means the percussion is on, The third harmonic is being used. It has a fast decay and a soft volume, not a loud volume. Although they would change some of these things. Almost everybody you hear playing a solo in jazz organ is using this kind of setting. Jack McDuff pulled one more drawbar out, so he had all four out, which gave it a little more treble.
Okay.
And if you listen to Melvin, and they played with vibrato. So there's 6 different positions of vibrato in chorus on a Hammond. Many organists play with the C3 vibrato, which is kind of at 1 o'clock. But Larry Young would play with the C1 vibrato. I think that's all the way at the bottom. When you listen to Freddie Roach, he plays V3. Is that at 11 o'clock? I'm not sure. He would also play with the second. So the last switch on the percussion. So the percussion controls are here. The vibrato controls are here. If you push the rocker switch down all the way on the right of an organ, it goes to the second harmonic. And a lot of modern organists like this sound. Gary Versace, Larry Goldings uses it a lot. Sam Yahel really loves it. Are you into Sam Yahel? I really love his records.
I haven't heard them, so it's one thing I like about this channel. I get to learn
I
about
like
all these different.
Truth and Beauty. To me, he has really wonderful control. And he would play with a slow decay for his percussion, which meant it was a little bit more legato. And am I going on too long about this?
Oh, no, not at all.
An interesting thing about the organ is it's not touch sensitive as the keys go down, but the percussion is touch sensitive.
Okay.
So you have to play it with more of a staccato attack, or the percussion doesn't sound. If you play very legato or smoothly on an organ, the percussion won't sound on every note. So, yeah, guys that would play on the second harmonic are Melvin Rhine on the first 3 Wes Montgomery albums, Freddie Roach, Babyface Willette, all these modern guys. So,
interesting. Yeah. And so, how do you change your settings a lot, or do you have the particular?
I change them a lot, and drawbars are kind of like mini EQs. If you want more highs in a sound, you can do this. If I want a more nasal sound, I'll pull more black drawbars out. The white drawbars are kind of flute tones and more consonant, I would say. You can even set the drawbars in ways that make very unusual effects. Larry Goldings is a master at this. I remember he had this article in Keyboard magazine that showed 5 of his drawbar settings, and they were very unusual. But using the black bars and one of the black drawbars makes a third in the overtone series. And by the way he would set the drawbar, it almost sounds, I don't want to say it sounds polyphonic. It sounds like there's 2 notes going on. So you can set the drawbars in very unusual ways to get very different effects.
And so on this record, you changed it depending on the tune, on what you wanted it to sound like. So if you're going
a lot, but I was basically using the most common drawbar settings of that period of organ music. So there's also on one of the songs, I can't remember, it might be You Don't Know Jack. I do a technique called squabbling. Have you ever heard of this? Mm-hmm. Well, my finger is broken, so I'm not the best, model for squabbling. I'm not the best hand model. This is a technique where you kind of smush all of these fingers on the keys and kind of play like this, and it almost sounds like block chords. That is the first drawbar out and the last 4 out. That might even be called the Errol Garner or Fats Waller setting. I can't remember which one, but that has a name. I also play on 6:30 in the morning what is called the silk setting. I think that's the first, the third, and the last drawbar out. For many of my McDuff tunes, I'm playing his sound, which is the first 4 drawbars out with the third percussion. And then I would change it. I played a little second harmonic too, especially on my more modern tunes. There's also very big full drawbar places where I'm hitting big organ stabs. But the settings on that album, I would say, are pretty traditional.
And is it so when do you actually change during the song? Will you change them? So if you're comping, do you move the drawbars, and then when you go to the solo, you change it?
Yes. I'm changing them a lot. I think I change them more than most people somehow.
Okay, so if you want to cut through better, you'll change it for the
If I
solo.
want to
So
do that, or if I want to, sometimes if I go to a different soloist and I'm comping behind the solos, I'll try to get a different color underneath them, something like that.
So what about playing with a bass player? Because generally, the organ, of course, can carry the lows that you don't need a bass player. However, there are some instances where you'll play with a bass player. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. I actually don't play without a bass player on organ very much. I like to play the bass and the pedals. But what you can do, is if you pull all of the drawbars out on a manual of drawbars on an organ, and you push the first two in, it actually is like an octave up key. So it raises the octave of what you're playing.
Okay.
So very often I will push the first two or three drawbars in and comp for myself on the lower manual like a pianist left hand when they're playing chords in the left hand. And then in the right hand I could do what I usually do. So that's usually what I do when I play with a bass player.
Interesting. That way you're not stepping on each other, right?
Right. I don't play bass lines at all when I play with a bassist.
So tell us a little bit. What do you think about the state of jazz right now? Because you've been playing for quite a long time. Do you think there's just as many places to play as there used to be? You hear a lot of different people saying it's not what it was. For example, here in Birmingham, Alabama, jazz used to be quite popular. Now you've only got like one place that plays real jazz. We have a jam session. But what is your experience as far as what you think of the state of jazz is right now?
I think it's great. I mean, I'm also fortunate to be playing with a lot of the cool people in jazz right now. So I don't know if everybody's experience is like mine. And remember, there's so few Hammond organists that if you can do it and you're kind of a nice guy, like you're going to work with a lot of people because there just are not a lot of them, especially if you play the real Hammond. I was playing last night at Mesro. I actually played piano. It was totally full, both sets. I think in big cities it's still very strong. There are many less clubs in New York than there used to be. There were more, but I still work kind of a lot,
And then what about going on the road? So you still go up to Vancouver quite a bit? I mean, you were obviously there when you made this record. But
in February, we have like a release there. And I go up there like once a year, I would say.
And as far as touring goes, so if you go how do you get the organ you want? Or you don't have one sent there, right? Do you have to rent one or have one set up for you? How does that work? I'm always curious.
I actually in Europe get a lot of tour support because I'm very friends with a great organist and guitarist named Dirk van der Linden. And when I was on tour in Europe the whole month of November. Excuse me. Can I get my tea very quickly?
Yeah, sure.
We started out in Belgium and we played in Germany, and he gave me this new Hammond XK5, which is the flagship kind of portable Hammond rig, and he's got a big van. He played guitar. He plays amazing guitar. And so for my first 2 weeks on tour, or maybe it was 10 days, I was playing like the fanciest Hammond rigs you could get. So it was like a step up for me in a way, because I don't have a car in New York. I can't bring pedals and all that kind of stuff. And then I went to Prague for a few weeks where I had a Hammond SK2. I rented it, but I have a good relationship with a music rental company there from Osnoy you were talking about. I met these guys, and that's a very interesting organ trio. We haven't made an organ trio album, but the trio is me, Oz, and Anton Fig. Do you know who Anton Fig is?
Oh yeah. Big in rock meat, yeah.
On Cyndi Lauper, all 3 albums, I think. He plays on Kiss albums.
Yeah.
And he's a very interesting guy. Anyway, I met this instrument rental company that's in Prague, and when I landed in Prague, I picked up a Hammond SK2, which is basically the last version of the 2-manual keyboard. It's very good. And then I went to Spain. I was playing a few different instruments. I did play a Hammond XK3, which is an earlier version of the XK5. And in Madrid, I had a Viscount organ. So I was very lucky. People helped me too, somehow, you know.
That's awesome. So in New York, what do? Do you just take a portable with you if they don't have one, or how does that work?
Because I'm so centrally located, I just walk to my gigs a lot or take the subway. I also have a cart that I can put. Usually the places have some sort of amplifier. So I have a one manual XK4. Would you like to see it?
Yeah, absolutely.
2 seconds. So when I'm usually playing in New York, I have a two manual one, but it's pretty heavy. I will bring this a lot, which is pretty easy to get around, and I'll show you what it looks like. I have bubble wrap around it because I'm uptight.
You got to keep it protected. Yeah, that's really cool.
So this is pretty nice. It's got the drawbars here. It's really good sounding. And Hammond USA is really, really good to me. I work with them a lot. I'm friends with the guys. And I have all of their new instruments, basically. So I have this one. I have what is called an SKX Pro, which is a two manual version. That's kind of their flagship portable organ. And I even have what is called an M Solo, which is a smaller kind of backpack sort of thing.
That's really cool. So you just grab your bag and off you go onto the subway or wherever you got to go around there.
And because I live near Union Square, that's like a big hub for all the subways. I even walk to work a lot of the time.
And so now tell us a little bit about the jazz education stuff you do. I don't know how much time I don't want to take up I could talk to you probably for.
Oh, cool.
But tell us about the jazz education side of things, because it looks like you do a lot of master classes and you write for these different magazines.
I used to write for more magazines. I think there was a time I was writing for, I don't even know, maybe 5 to 10 magazines. I wrote for 2. I think there's one called Tastenwelt in Germany that had a music component. There was one called Musicus, which you mentioned in the Czech Republic. I wrote for Keyboard Magazine. So I was writing New York City Jazz Record. I was writing for a lot of magazines for a while, but there's not really a ton of magazines anymore.
Right. Got Downbeat.
So I've written a few times for Downbeat. I think it's called the Woodshed articles.
Okay.
Which is where you give like techniques. The most organ-centric articles I wrote were in Keyboard Magazine. I'm very good friends with the editor in those years named John Regan. He's also a great keyboardist. And he would be talking about an organist or someone, and my column, if you will, was to give 5 exercises with music to emulate this organist. I'd put the drawbar settings, I'd show the bass, I'd show what the pedals were doing. I also wrote a book on Hal Leonard about the organ called 101 Hammond B3 Tips. I used to teach really a lot. In the pandemic, I would say I was teaching full time. Like I had a lot of students. I still have a few students, but because of my travel and stuff, I don't teach lessons as much as I used to. But it's very common for me to go to a city and teach at a school there or talk about music. Like I taught 2 clinics when I was in Europe in November.
So you get around to do all the master classes, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about the jazz education these days? I mean, I think that a lot of people are probably better educated as far as what they're learning. The span of jazz, of course, has grown over the years than what it was if you went back to the 50s or 60s. But I think, and you can tell me what your opinion is on this, but back when I grew up, I played mostly rock music, guitar. Well, I'd play that same record over and over and over and over of my favorite people. So there might be like 10 records that I listened to a lot. and that influenced how I played guitar. Nowadays, everybody's listening to so much music. How do you think that affects everybody's playing?
The biggest thing that I see when I teach people about music in these different places is not that they have a lack of knowledge. It's that they feel insecure about something, or they have one or two areas very developed, but then there's kind of a big hole in a third area. I also see the way they work with their body, which is, sometimes they'll be tapping their feet very much. It's just very tense. I think people are tense. And a lot of young people that are in music school want to be great. I remember what that felt like. It's not super comfortable. So the thing that I talk to people most about is to not hold on to the reins so tight. And I show them how they can play all of jazz music with major scales. I used to be into very ornate harmonic systems, but now I play major scales, And most of it is just me letting them know that they're okay, and that if they can keep their body still, they're going to get immediately great results. That's what happened to me. I had a very noisy inner dialogue about my playing for years, and when I was 30, I kind of put music to the side a little bit to study Kung Fu, and I stopped thinking about it so much, and I could instantly do it, and it wasn't painful for me. It was fast, So I realized then that the body stuff, which is what I was working on with the martial arts, controlling your breathing, being still, this is all what the Chinese martial arts are all about. So I tell people to get more into that aspect of music, not the learning of things. I say a lot, music, being good at music is not a gathering of, it's a stripping away.
Interesting.
So I think they probably have too much information now.
Yeah, because it's easy to go and listen to, on Amazon Music or whatever you have, streaming service, you can go through and literally listen to hundreds of songs. And that brings me to another point of that listening to an album versus listening to a playlist. Now, there's nothing wrong with a playlist that, if you want to put your favorites on there and listen to that. But when it comes down to sitting and listening to an album, that's a completely different experience.
Yeah, that's true. And I love that you have to flip it. I love the way vinyl sounds more than digital, especially an instrument like an organ that's all tubey and analog like that. Yeah. And if you're listening to a playlist, people skip through songs. It's the real thing about the moral of the story of all these things is attention span that we're talking about. The attention span is very short, with the phones and all of this kind of stuff. So that's maybe not the most fertile ground for artistry, short attention span.
Right, and then it would seem to me that it would be better to pick some of your favorites and study those particular artists and then try to develop your own sound. You talk about a little bit about that, developing your own style because at the beginning, whenever instrument you're playing, you're always going to pick out your favorite guys and you're going to try to copy their licks and copy what they're doing. But at some point, you have to kind of separate that from your own ideas and playing.
I did that for a little while in the beginning, but I stopped doing it very quickly. I stopped transcribing completely. I actually advise people not to transcribe, which I think is a not very popular...
Right.
But I tell them not to do it, because then they're going to their gig and they're trying to reference something over here instead of working with what's right here. So I tell people to learn the scales. Just being able to play... Do you know, obviously, what a 2-5-1 progression is because you play music? Just being able to play the major scale in every key on the one chord of a 2-5-1 progression, if you don't have that really nailed, it's going to sound like that. So I tell people to really master simple concepts. And then if they want to add some more advanced harmony, you can sprinkle it in. But a lot of times when I hear people that are young and trying to get better at music, they have a lot of great information, but they're trying to be too great. And there's a detachment that you have to become a vessel for art to move through, if I had to put it in those terms.
Sure. It's instead of focusing on, I'm going to be the greatest organ player ever and I'm going to learn everything, versus I'm going to learn the techniques that it takes to play. I'm going to develop my ear, and then I'm going to kind of let it flow through me and create this art.
Yeah. And I think not a lot of people think about it that way. And that's, to me, having been to all of those different places that you mentioned, the way to think about it, or the way to not think about it more accurately.
Right. Yeah. So you don't like transcriptions pretty much because you think it kind of sidetracks people, even at the beginning. Because I know at the beginning a lot of people will transcribe things and then they'll just so they can understand what a particular artist is doing, and then you kind of do your own thing. But you're saying that probably a lot of people get stuck in that, right? And they try to apply it where it doesn't belong.
I think that's true, and I transcribed in the beginning, and when you're listening to Herbie Hancock or Chick Corea and you transcribe them, in a way, it's not possible to transcribe, because I think they're playing shapes, they're moving things around, and there may not be as codified theory as people think it is. McCoy Tyner maybe, but if you're listening to Herbie Hancock, it's hard to know what's going on. It sounds amazing, but I'm not sure exactly what he's doing. I think it's physical. I think he hears things. He's definitely influenced by a lot of great music. He has an amazing mind. But I'm not sure it's as black and white as people think it is. I've done 2 organ transcriptions in the last couple years. One was Monk's Dream from Larry Young, and Blues for Jay on Organ Grinder Swing, which to me is an amazing organ solo. And when I analyze Jimmy Smith's tricks, they don't make any kind of harmonic sense at all, really, from a perspective. They just sound cool, and it's a physical thing that he's going for. And it's what came out of his body when he could quiet his rational mind. I don't know if that's exactly what he was thinking, but when you hear a great jazz artist, I feel like the mind is a little bit disengaged. There's a lot of stuff in the hands that they know about, and then it's just coming out. And this is what it sounded like on that Jimmy Smith transcription to me. So I did those transcriptions, but I can't say that they helped me because I didn't understand what they were doing, and it was not my music.
Interesting. So you don't think it helped, like, influence your sound in any way, or because of the...
I'm sure I'm influenced by
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I'm sure. And the rhythm, and I'm sure I am.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah. And then let's touch on improvisation really quickly. And then you can let us know what's going on in the future with you. As far as improvisation goes, whether it's in the studio or on the stage, do you look at it being the same way? Is it more pressure in the studio to make sure that things are going to be the way you want them? Because a lot of people think that when something goes on record, it's there forever, and oh gosh, I've got a mistake on there, and everybody's going to hear it from now until whenever. How do you think about that, and your idea of improvisation in general?
Improvisation, my friend Henry Hay said this, is a snapshot of time. And I don't labor over what I just played, even if it has mistakes. I accept it. The biggest reason that I play music is because it makes my mind still. It's my favorite thing to do for that first. So if I can get to the place where my mind is still, and this is what Kenny Werner's whole effortless mastery stuff is about. And I studied with him before the book even came
I have
out.
that book, yeah.
So in the beginning, it was the 5-finger exercise. You would just drop your fingers on the piano keys and try to lose your baggage that you were bringing to it. So for some reason, that stuck with me. And when I touch keys, my mind gets very still, which it's not a majority of the time. I have a noisy mind. I have a noisy inner dialogue. So it's such a relief for me to play music compared to everything else. And think about it. The notes stay exactly where they are. Like there's not, you can really count on them. And I don't know anything else in life that's that reliable.
Interesting. Yeah. So when you're playing the instrument, when you hit that note's going to be there, of course, unless it's out of tune, but you're playing a piano or something.
Even then, even then, it's usually, you can count on it, you know. And I don't know if there's a lot of things like that.
Yeah. Tell us about what's coming up for you. So this album just came out. You have any other ideas for future records at this point, or are you?
I have 3 more coming out supposedly in the next little while.
Oh, really?
I have a solo organ record on Steeplechase, and there's been 3 of those, and those are very strange. Kind of witchy, lounge kind of stuff. I have a solo piano record on Steeplechase, and I have a album with George Coleman that's kind of a follow-up to Groovin' with Big G that we did in 2017.
Nice. So you got all that's going to be coming out next year?
With George, I'm not sure when that album has come out. It's been a little bit delayed. I'm actually not sure it will even come out, but I think it will. We will see. I'm not sure.
What about any live albums? Anything there that you have
Live.
kind of something like this live?
No, not that I know of right now.
Are those more difficult to set up or get recorded?
It's
or
difficult to get good sound on live recordings.
Yep, that's true. I mean, you have a couple places in New York that are known for getting pretty good sound, like the Smoke.
They get a good sound. They have like a machine. You know, they make a lot of those albums there, and they have it. It's like Corey's thing. It's like a machine for making albums, and they have an aesthetic with the cover art and everything else like that.
But at Frankie's, they also do live recordings there, and they sound pretty good.
They do.
So that would be an option as
I've
well,
done
right?
one there one time, but it hasn't come out yet. So we actually have a live recording from Frankie's, but it's not out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll be coming out here at some point. What about playing live? What do you got coming up? I'm sure you're a busy guy, so you've probably got a lot of shows lined up here.
I am playing a bunch in New York for the rest of the month. I play at a cool new place in the East Village called Midnight Blue that has a cool organ in there tomorrow night with a guitarist named Ben Turner. And next month I'm going to the West Coast. I'll be playing in like Seattle and Portland. And then I will go to the NAMM show. I'm playing in Los Angeles at Sam First, maybe on the 29th. And then I'm going to play at Oakland at Piedmont Piano Company, February 1st, I believe. And I'm at a place called Torch. Maybe it's Torchlight or Torch in Sacramento the night before that.
Wow, so you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
Got a lot of things going on. Cool. Was there anything else you'd like to discuss here before we go? I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out.
No problem. We've covered everything.
Yeah, we talked a lot, and I really appreciate you coming on the channel. And of course, I'd love to. Well, thank you. I love to learn from you guys. You guys have just such a wealth of knowledge, and there's always, jazz is such a, again, it's just growing and growing. But there's so many people that I'll learn about that aren't very popular on record, for example. So in kind of the vinyl community where people collect records, it's always about the Blue Note and all the big names and that kind of stuff, which is great. Those are fantastic. But there's a lot of newer records or even more obscure records with people that have been playing for a long time that aren't well recognized. And so that's kind of what this channel is kind of oriented towards. So. But I appreciate you coming on the channel, and this is a fantastic record, I think. And there's only a couple hundred of these made, I think. I think I looked online. There's only like 200 pressings of this.
I have them too. If people want them, they can just contact me.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll put a link below to your website and everything where they can contact you.
Write to me through the website. Yeah.
Okay. And then anyways, yeah, this is a fantastic record. I look forward to many more coming out from you. So hopefully we'll talk again soon when your next ones come out.
Too. You were a great interviewer.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You had some really poignant questions. Very smart.
Well, I appreciate you joining me. Take care.
Take care.
Stop this.